Prismatic Warlock and especially Prismatic Hunter are getting a lot of playtime from the community right now. By comparison, Prismatic Titan mains aren't as popular, and even Bungie's own combat area lead has said, quote, "We're talking about Titans a lot right now internally and looking at that which is not just Prismatic at all. Weighing all that together, and we're definitely not done touching Prismatic at all." So it seems that more Titan love is in fact on the way, but in the meantime, I've actually put together a Prismatic Titan PvE build that I'm sorta enjoying a lot. Today, I'm gonna share it with you. The entire build will be up on Mobalytics, by the way, sponsor of today's video. Full build link in the pinned comment, but check them out for all kinds of great info and builds alike. In a nutshell, this is actually a great intro level build for players who have never experimented with double special before, aka using two special weapons at the same time instead of one special and one primary, and you'll also have near constant uptime on Devour. By the way, I wouldn't bring this build to say DPS phase on the Witness and Salvation's Edge, an encounter which Titans seem borderline allergic to in general, but you'd be fine running it in GMs, Onslaught, plenty of other tough PvE content, or to any encounter where rockets are kind of the norm. The double special loadout in question, rocket sidearms of freaking course. They're easy to use, they hit really hard, and they have a stupidly generous ammo economy, to the point where I'm convinced Bungie is probably going to eventually change it, so might as well enjoy it while we can. But again, if you've never used double special before, try it before worrying about running out of ammo. Anyway, my recommended tag team weapon combo for this build is the Call and Buried Bloodline. I do understand that some players out there just have bad RNG and don't yet have the Buried Bloodline. Go ahead and pour one out for those poor bastards. But if I'm describing you and you don't have the Bloodline, you could easily swap in Indebted Kindness and have just as much fun. If you do have Buried Bloodline, hell to the yeah. I vaguely remember from Datto's original Buried Bloodline review way back when, he mentioned liking the gun, but liking the idea of it more when using it not with a Void class, because Void already has access to Devour. Prismatic fits the bill for Buried Bloodline perfectly in my opinion, and keeping the Devour ball up in the air with double special is dummy easy to do. By the way, if you have the exotic Catalyst on the Bloodline, you're going to get some quality extra mileage out of the build. The Catalyst lets you weaken on a hit when you have Devour active. That'll pair nicely with expanding Abyss on the artifact and also Void Hegemony. The Call is our other weapon, and it'll hit even harder, especially if you're going to use One for All, which I do recommend. You could go with Vorpal, Desperate Measures, or Golden Tricorn depending on your personal preference, but I think One for All is straightforward, simple, and very easy to proc on the Call. In column 3, no surprise, I have Lead from Gold. That's going to make it even easier to make sure you're getting additional special ammo when using the build. To raise the effectiveness of both our sidearms, my exotic armor pick is Hazardous Propulsion, aka the new Titan exotic chest piece, which has the ability to buff your outgoing rocket damage for 10 seconds when activated. And by the way, when I say rockets, I don't just mean rocket launcher damage. The HP exotic buffs several different things, which you can take note of here via this handy cheat sheet image from our good friend Court. Go give that guy a follow. There's some interesting stuff like buffed Wolfpack rounds on a sword, but my favorite feature of the Hazardous is that it buffs the damage of rocket frame sidearms. There's nothing quite like taking weapons that are already ridiculously popular and making them even better. If you haven't used Hazardous Propulsion yet, by the way, a brief crash course. By getting precision hits or final blows, you get a chance to have your exotic load an Exodus rocket. When you activate your class ability, you fire out all your stored rockets, and based on how many rockets can connect with a target, you now have a 10-second window where you buff your outgoing rocket damage. Again, rocket sidearms fall under that umbrella, and the max damage buff you can get from this exotic is plus 35% extra damage for 10 seconds. Now, one could argue that this may potentially be a bit of overkill because rocket sidearms are already strong and will rip through most weaker enemies in one hit anyway. True, but orange and yellow bars do exist, and Hazardous lets you smack them even harder. On top of that, I'm running a crafted Apex, because why the hell not? Now, all 3 of my weapons will get buffed by spamming Hazardous Propulsion, and building up those kinetic rockets is really easy to do, by the way, meaning most of the time you should either have the damage buff or be just about ready to activate one. Quick heads up, if you don't have the Buried Bloodline sidearm unlocked and you're instead running Indebted Kindness, feel free to use something like G-Horn in the heavy slot, especially if your other teammates are also running rocket launchers. That way, you still get the damage buff for all 3 weapons with Hazardous, and you're proccing Wolfpack rounds for the boys. All good things across the board. All right, why don't we take a look under the hood at the old aspect and fragment sitch. There will be opportunities for you to switch out some of this up based on personal preference, by the way. First up, yeah, shocker, a Prismatic Titan build that does not focus on meleeing. I mean, to be completely honest, Prismatic Hunters are doing that better right now anyway. But we got Unbreakable, which if you haven't fiddled with yet is actually quite fun. The damage resist factor is very high. If you're in a GM Nightfall or other high-level activity, you can use Unbreakable to quickly revive a teammate, even if they're in a dangerous area, which is great. But most of my Unbreakable usage is just jumping into a crowd of dudes and blasting all of them point blank. Reason for that is that we have on the Facet of Bravery fragment. Defeating a target with a grenade final blow gives our void weapons volatile. Because Unbreakable uses grenade energy, Unbreakable kills will proc Facet of Bravery, and now our Buried Bloodline does all of the following. Gives Devour, weakens enemies, spreads volatile, and potentially gives overshields via void hegemony. While we're on the topic, Bravery will also give unraveling rounds to our The Call sidearm when we get melee final blows. In theory, you can run any melee you want to get this done, but Hammer Strike hits very hard and is faster to throw around than Thunderclap. Why don't we talk about the grenade option, maybe one of the bigger things you can fiddle with based on your personal preference. Random Titan fact, apparently when you charge up and deal damage with the Unbreakable aspect, if you have a Thermite grenade equipped, Unbreakable does way more damage, and I'm not really sure why. You can test it for yourself if you don't believe me. Other grenade options do pretty normal damage if you do a quick charge and release. Doing the charge and release for the exact same duration, and again having blocked 0 incoming damage before releasing the blast, our Thermite Unbreakable does over 338% more damage. Jesus tap dancing Christ. Again, not really sure if that is intended or not. Until Bungie changes that, Thermite will be the recommended pairing for blasting enemies with Unbreakable. However, if you want to use Unbreakable for revive utility, especially if maybe you don't have Buried Bloodline, and again, half of Unbreakable is just giving Bloodline volatile rounds for free, you could instead use something else like Consecration or Knockout, and in that case, you could throw on a Shackle grenade. The Shackle IMO would be for players who really just want an extra way to say F you to champions. You can already handle both Unstoppable and Barrier champs with this build thanks to Unstoppable Sidearm and Radiant Orbs. But again, if that's just not enough, the Shackle nade is there. We also have Drenger's Lash, because again, this isn't really a melee or Diamond Lance focused build. If you didn't know, Drenger has kind of a unique pairing with the Thruster class ability. Normally, when you have a Titan Barricade, the Suspending Strand Wave shoots out in a straight line in front of you. With Thruster, though, you instead leave behind a knot of strand matter after you dodge, which then blows up. It's a useful tool that you can use to get enemies off you immediately, especially if you're using it to activate your hazardous propulsion at close-ish range. Reminder that we're using Thruster, so we'll be able to activate hazardous propulsion more frequently than if we ran Barrier. Fragment-wise, Facet of Protection purely for the extra damage resist. That'll allow you to get close-ish and use Unbreakable more frequently. Facet of Hope, because with Buried Bloodline, we're gonna have Devour up a lot, and when Devour is active, we'll get our Thruster ability to charge faster. Facet of Purpose is one of those options that you can swap out if you want. Our selected super is Twilight Arsenal, which you can freely change depending on the activity. But we're already getting overshields through Unbreakable and Void Hegemony, so why not lean even harder into more overshields? Facet of Bravery we've already gone over. Facet of Sacrifice will simply give more bonus Darkness Transcendence energy because we'll have Devour up a lot. Facet of Devotion is kind of the same thing for light energy. Remember, Facet of Bravery will make it so that melee final blows give the Call Unraveling rounds. With Unraveling rounds in effect, Facet of Devotion gives that extra light energy. Armor mod wise, on the helmet we've got Strand Siphon and Harmonic Siphon. That should mean you're generating a bunch of orbs of power via rapid kills with either the Call or Buried Bloodline. Also, because I had room for it, Powerful Friends. But if you had room, you could put on Heavy Ammo Finder, Ashes to Assets, whatever you want. Here's another opportunity where you can change things up based on your personal preference. On the Gauntlet armor, I have Grenade Kickstart, which allows me to use Unbreakable more. If you'd rather use your armor charge towards maybe Utility Kickstart so you can use Hazardous Propulsion more often, you can do that too. Or you could even throw on some Weapon Surge mods on your leg armor, your call. But right now, we have on Grenade Kickstart and Firepower to get more out of Unbreakable. Chest armor, no surprise, all defensive mods change around depending on the activity that you're in. For leg armor, feel free to put on whatever you want, but I've got on stacks on stacks, innervation, and recuperation. And for our butt towel, we have distribution, bomber, and powerful attraction. Finally, stat distribution. Resil is our #1 priority because it gives additional damage reduction, and again, staying alive in PvE is kind of important. After that, I build towards recovery and discipline. Discipline so we can use Unbreakable more. A little TLDR on the gameplay loop of the build. If you can, try to open things up with an Unbreakable kill. After that, go ahead and whip out Buried Bloodline and start spamming to get Devour going. With Devour in full effect, you can change to the Call as needed for additional punching power, and when you notice that you've got a full charge on Exodus rockets, activate your Titan dodge and let those babies fly. Now you've got extra damage with all your weapons for the next 10 seconds. Before tagging a big bad with Twilight Arsenal, try to maybe hit them with Buried Bloodline first. If Devour is active, your Bloodline shot will apply Weaken, and with expanding Abyss on the artifact, that means that your Twilight Arsenal super will be hitting an already weak enemy on the first axe throw rather than the second. And that's it. Rinse and repeat. Enjoy both free Devour and a satisfying double special loadout. If you want me to make a build focused around a particular exotic or playstyle, let me know down in the comment section. Again, full build link in the pinned comment. Thank you very much for watching. Peace.